shoe. These days, seems I feel my life just like a river running through the year of the cat. Once again I am a bachelor. I live with my son, and we work in the weaver trade. And every time I look into his eyes, oh, he reminds me of that fair young maid. The foggy, foggy
as he slashes at his brain, smack the knife where it's right against the rich. The men and moms swim away. Who is missing, like so many wealthy men? Now McKeith acquired his cash box. God alone knows how or when. There are those who are in darkness. There are others in the light. We can see those in the brightness, those in darkness, drop from sight.
Hi there, my name is Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. How are you doing today? I have a very special guest today. My guest today has been helping me with some discussions I've been having about Martin guitars. And indeed, he's a wealth of information, also a fantastic musician, as you saw from the video there. I have to say, I really enjoyed watching that video and experiencing some live music again. It was very nice to see. And I also got to see this gentleman's awesome talent as well. So let's bring him in right away. How are you doing, Spoon Phillips?
Hey, hi Aaron. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming all the way from Brooklyn, right?
That's right. We're only a stone's throw away from each other, apparently.
That's awesome. We've got a great crowd here already. I'm just bringing their comments onto the screen so we can see them. Mark just said hi. We've got lots of friends I was saying hi to at the beginning of the stream. So just say hi to everyone that's here. It's really awesome. So today's going to be a bit different to my regular interviews. We're going to start with an interview about Spoon and his life and his music, but we're going to move into a Martin guitar Q&A. This could be a long one. So yeah, get yourself a nice cup of coffee or a drink and join us for this. And feel free to join in with your thoughts and questions as well. Let's just discuss everything Martin guitar today and get some insight from Spoon, because Spoon has played a lot of Martin guitars. I think I first saw you demoing guitars for Maury's Music. I've seen you do a load of videos on there, and they're great. So thanks for doing those. But let's talk about your life before that, because I don't know much about you. We've kind of become friends throughout what's been going on through YouTube. So where are you from originally, and what got you into music?
I grew up in Northwest, in a small courthouse city, about 100 miles south of Detroit, so up by Indiana and Michigan. And my parents were big music lovers. My father instilled a love of Chet Baker and Brubeck and Getz and those guys into us. When my mom got the Beatles' early records, Peter, Paul and Mary, Dylan's early records, and I think my father brought me a Django Reinhardt record when he found out I was interested in guitar, but that was a bit later. My brother was a pool shooter and actually won a guitar off of somebody, brought it home and didn't really play it. And I picked it up, and my aunt gave me the creaky old Whitmark Dylan book, and I knew how the songs were supposed to go, and that almost ended my interest in guitar, because he did a lot of those demos on the piano or using a capo, but they didn't account for that, and they transcribed them in the key he did them in. So all the songs were in E flat and A flat and B flat. And for a kid just trying to learn to play the guitar and trying to finger an E flat, which is making a D with these fingers and then stretching the finger down to get the A string on the second fret, it was I thought, I'm never going to get this. And it wasn't until I saw him on television using a capo that it hit home that oh, now I see what's going on. So that got me interested, kept me interested after that.
Spoon, just be careful with your microphone. I think you're knocking it there.
Oh, sorry, bumping. I beg your pardon.
So what was your first guitar, a Martin guitar?
No, not at all. It was a Kahn. Which they actually made trumpets and tubas. So it was right in the 70s. It was probably made in 71, though I got it some years later. I had 71, 72, and it was an Asian import that they had paid some Japanese or Korean guitar company to make, and they put their name on it at that acoustic guitar boom that was going on just post Woodstock. And so it was, in all intents and purposes, a copy of a 0018. So it was some sort of mahogany back and side, some sort of spruce top. It was all plywood. You could see that after it got old and wore through. There was no solid wood involved. But everybody I played with that had other Asian imports, everybody always thought my guitar sounded really good. And I played that all the way through my university years and up into my early rock and roll years in New York City.
That's something we could discuss later. The whole solid wood, laminate, those kind of things. I have that discussion a lot with people. Like, what was your first guitar? One of mine was a Yamaha. Great guitar. It did a great job. It had a pickup in there as well. It sounded really good. But then we get into more sophisticated tastes for guitars like Martin and different things. But that could be a good question for later on. The whole thing about price and woods. So we'll get into that. So you've got a background in theater and art, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I did that in college. I was an acting major, and then I went back to grad school for directing, and directed plays in New York City for about my first 10 years here, and ended up being the artistic director of an acting company. And when you're 28, you can have 3 jobs and get paid for one of them. And when you're 38, that gets a bit harder. And when you're 48, that's basically, it becomes impossible. So, but I did get to go to London as an internship, and I had an internship in the Off-Broadway theater in New York. And I'm still very, very good friends with a lot of people from those days.
Awesome.
Both my rock band days and the theater days.
Yeah, tell me about the music scene, because I've been in New York since 2010, and I visited before then. I used to go down to Bleecker Street, and I saw the whole music scene. I used to play at the back fence before it closed down. The scene has changed a lot, not just recently, but even in the last few years, it's changed a lot. So what year did you move to New York, and how have you seen the scene change? And what have you got any good memories of gigs in New York City?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we're talking the '80s originally, and the '90s, and I would go see bands certainly at CBGB's and Maxwell's in Hoboken and those kind of places. And a lot of those places came and went, but CBGB's and Dixon Place was a performing artist space, Bowery Poetry Club, and a lot of my friends who were in rock and roll bands, they would play that circuit. I was more solo at the time, and then eventually started playing at parties with other people that sort of turned into acts, as it were. But when I came back, I was only here for a year, and then I went back to graduate school. And 3 years later, I came back. Most of those people had become more established, and friends that I met here, like Don Ralph of Life in a Blender, their first record came out, I think, in '86, and they're still making records. And his wife inherited a house in Seattle, but he still comes back, still records, still gigs. And there was a big variety show circuit for a long time, too. The Dog and Pony Show, New York Dog and Pony Show, was produced by a professional fashion model and a professional writer, and they would have all kinds of different acts on. But CBGB's for a lot of us was Ground Central, even though Ground Zero, even though it had was past its glory days. You could see Joey Ramone's stuff written on the dressing room walls and stuff like that. But most of those people had long Talking Heads, all that stuff. The people who really made it famous had pretty much moved on. Johnny Thunder was still alive then and still playing then around there, But yeah, so I kind of missed that scene and was sort of the next wave of that. But yeah, it was very exciting. It was always fun. It was always, you never knew who was going to show up. I felt a little aged when the Whitney Museum actually has taken the bar from King Tut's Wawa Hut, which was on a corner over by Thompson Square Park, and it's now a museum piece. And that's where a lot of, that's where we hung out. That's where a lot of performances happened. And dance, I directed one-woman shows at that time, and in addition to doing the music stuff. And it's a bit sobering that my youthful, exuberant times in New York City are now being represented in a modern art museum. But
So how about the music then? I mean, so have you recorded albums? What kind
I
of
only
gigs
have
do you
one
play?
album that I only did 2 summers ago. That's it's my solo instrumental stuff. It's a theme album that all has to do with a very long love affair I had with England, with Great Britain, and with a particular person in Great Britain. So there's a couple tunes called Riding Up to Boston, Riding Back from Boston, but that's still about going to see her in Boston. And almost all the music you hear on the Martin NAMM review videos that I do and that you see on Maury's Music are the full pieces are actually on that record. And I had been doing my own videos for quite a while where Martin would let me go into their sound room on the day the new models come out, as long as I don't publish anything until the NAMM show opens, and I shoot the videos of all the new models, or most of the new models, the ones that I'm interested in. And Maury and Laurie saw that, and they approached me about doing product videos for them and wanted me to do the same thing that I do on my videos. Basically, I don't talk on my videos. I just write, I write my reviews for my website.
Colin
Just
Larkin.
one man's guitar.
One man's guitar. I'll put your links below when the video's posted.
Oh, good.
Colin Larkin says, excellent album.
Oh, great. Thank you, Colin. He knows his way around really good Martins.
And Maury as well. Love that CD, he says.
Grand.
Yeah.
Grand. It's interesting. I've been hearing more and more from Europeans and Brits. So I'm becoming more and more popular over there, apparently. Though I get mail from all over the world. I get mail from Israel and Thailand, and people writing me with questions. And now that Martin dealers from America are not allowed to ship overseas, and Martins are much more expensive overseas, I get more general guitar questions and or Martin history questions, less so of which Martin should I buy, but I did help a Chilean doctor buy a Martin for his son recently.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
That was nice.
That's cool. Let's talk about Maury, because again, I've met you. I know you from Maury's music. You do the demos on his channel. So how did you meet Maury? What's the story there?
We were both very early. I was one of the founding members of the Unofficial Martin Guitar Forum. I wasn't an official moderator or anything, but I signed up for it the first day that the founder went into the Acoustic Guitar Magazine forum and said, is there anybody here who actually likes Martins rather than just talks about, what's wrong with them? And so he started that forum, and I signed up on that. For that, I wasn't a big internet forum person at that time necessarily, but so I went back to it probably a week later and started getting involved. Maury was involved at that time. We met at the very first event that's now called Martin Fest. And we might have actually met if he came. There was the very first event was a private event in the backyard of one of the main moderators, a guy named Mac Carter, who lives in New Jersey. I don't remember if Maury was actually there or not. But we bonded at the first Martin Fest. And he and I were two of the few people that actually got up and played at the open mic. I think very first I played like Alicia or Triad, one of those David Crosby songs. I think it was the first song he ever heard me. I think that's where I saw him. I opened my eyes in the middle of that, and he was standing there grinning at me because he was also a big Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young fan. And this was before he had a shop. This was when he was just a gigging musician. And then he started a business on the side doing like bone saddles for people and setups. And because he's such a great guy and got to know, because of the Martin Fest stuff, got to know some of the people at Martin, it was very unprecedented for them to award a dealership to somebody who didn't even have a shop yet. And so and then he asked me to do a quasi clinic on Martin guitars at the grand opening of his store, and that one thing led to another. So,
what year was that? What year did the Unofficial Martin Guitar Forum begin?
That's a good question. The first Martin Fest was 2002.
Okay.
And because a big topic of conversation, unfortunately, it was where were you on 9/11? So it was the first summer after that had happened.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
And so that's how I always that's easy for me to remember when it actually was, because that was on a lot of people's minds. And so his store opened I don't remember a year or two later. I don't know if he's busy right now. If he's on the line, but he could certainly say.
I think he's lurking.
Yeah, possible. Let me just see if he's
Chris Hull.
Said anything to me.
Chris Hull has a question, but Chris, what I'll do is when we move on to the kind of Q&A part, we've got some questions written out, and I'll bring your question into that. So we'll get to that real soon, okay, Chris? If I forget, please remind me, but I won't forget. Right, now, on the information you gave me is something very interesting here. It says you went looking for a guitar, and you went looking for a Taylor, but they didn't have the sound that you thought a guitar should have. And this is something I've experienced as well. Looking for guitars, I've looked at different brands, and I do have different brands here as well. But I remember Taylor is in my mind because they look great, and they have an interesting pickup system, and they look so well made, and they look so great for stage. But I strum them, and very often they just don't resonate with me the way I want them to. Now I'm still looking for one, and I know that they keep changing the bracings and things. I'm not saying I'll never play one, but I could kind of relate to what you said. Have you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, my first thought is what I've said for many years is if everybody liked the same thing, there'd be one kind of guitar. Bob Taylor's, the real genius of Bob Taylor was he was the first significant builder to build acoustic guitars for electric guitar players. He put what was essentially a low, easy to play electric guitar neck that was bolted onto the body. And around the same time, Michael Gurian was developing what is now called the mortise and tenon neck joint, and he did his thing. Taylor, I was going for Taylor because I did a workshop with Leo Kotke and Chet Atkins and Steve Warner, and Leo was playing what he said was a Taylor 510 that he just found on a shop. Was looking a guitar broke or whatever. I don't remember what city he was in. He went to a guitar store, played guitars, walked out with a mahogany Sitka 510, and he was using one of the prototypes of what became his 12-string signature model at the time. And he said he credited Bob Taylor for bringing him back to the 12-string. And he liked them because he could reset his own necks in a dressing room if he had to. And a traditional glued-in dovetail neck joint that actually requires chisels and shaving and to reset a neck and all that stuff, you simply can't do that. And that was a big revolution. That's another complete different discussion, but traditional dovetail neck joints with all that extra mass going into a solid block, they're simply more resonant, have a more complex tone that can cause a lot of feedback issues. And so there's something to be said for the revolution of non-dovetail neck joints that Husson Dalton, Jim Olson, Bill Collins is kind of a hybrid. They have a pretty wide dovetail, but they have two big bolts and big steel rods in the neck, and you get a very straightforward, powerful fundamental that doesn't waver all over the place. And they don't, even Martin's M&T guitars that they were making for years, they don't have, in a live amplified situation, don't have necessarily the same kind of feedback issues you get from a traditional Guild, traditional Martin, Santa Cruz, and those kind of guitars.
That's interesting. I've not had an issue with feedback. For me, it's more to do with EQ and the pickup system than the guitar. But I can see what you're saying, that the body and the construction would affect those things. But
if you go back to that era, we were still using microphones.
Okay.
Only what's the round-bottomed guitar that Keith Partridge was playing, that everyone was playing at the in the 70s. That everybody was playing because pre-Takamine, American made, started in a helicopter factory.
Ovation.
Ovation, thank you. Ovation was really your only choice if you're going to play at a big arena. And so we're still I'm talking about more miking in the studio and out of the studio. But to answer your question, I'm sorry for that tangent. To answer your question, I went looking for Taylors. I played everything. I kept coming back to Martins, particularly the D28s, because I grew up with what was the acoustic guitar sound to me was Neil Young playing Cowgirl on the Sand on the Four-Way Street, and David Crosby playing Lee Shore and Triad, and Stephen Stills and his lead work, seeing Bob Dylan, Country for Bangladesh. That was the first record I ever bought with my own money. It was a Country for Bangladesh. The Dylan sets on that was he borrowed Pete Ham's D28. Would have been a straight braced Indian Rosewood D28. What are some of the other, and D18s too? Willis Allen Ramsey's album that had come out of Texas. Somebody brought it for my brother from down south. D18. Jerry Garcia on Ripple, D18. So a lot of those, that music that said acoustic guitar to me happened to all be Martins. I didn't even know what a Martin guitar was until I was in my 30s and started going into guitar shops and started reading about the Schoenberg soloists that were being made at the factory at the time, assembled at the factory. They're actually being made by Dana Bourgeois or T.J. Thompson eventually, and assembled at the factory and sold as a joint venture with Eric Schoenberg. I owned the Schoenberg at one point, the first one that had pearl trim, and actually sold it to C.F. Martin IV as part of his private collection. It's the only Schoenberg he owned.
That's a cool story. Maury said 2003.
Martin. Say again?
Maury said 2003.
Oh, very good. There we are.
And Colin said Ovation, and Maury said Ovation. And Marco said enjoying the show, watching from Macedonia. It's awesome.
Excellent.
And Maury said who's Jerry Garcia?
Yeah,
Thomas
you know,
More.
kids these days.
I still have my Ovation Legend from the 70s and have never had any work done to it. Plays great, sounds great plugged in, sounds like plastic unplugged. Here, okay, well, maybe we can lead in with this question then, because I was actually thinking about this today. I was playing some guitars, and I was thinking which one sounds the best. Now, I was comparing guitars of different sizes. I was comparing guitars of different materials, and some have pickups and some don't. So maybe this is a good question. I've seen, and indeed this is what got me into the Martin thing. I wanted a Martin guitar because they sound so big and resonant. And I wanted that to also sound like that on stage. Now, just to backtrack, before Martin, I did own a Taylor 414, an early one with the Fishman pickup. And I then played Maton guitars for a long time, the Australian guitars, which are really stage guitars. And then I didn't know much about Martin guitar. I sort of discovered them when I moved to America, because I'm in New York City, so it's very close to the factory, right? So once I discovered how awesome they are, and I will say this, I feel that Martin guitar also play really well now, especially because they're plecked, and I actually find the necks, and we'll talk about the necks later, but I find them incredibly comfortable, maybe because I'm used to them, I don't know. I find that they play really well. I haven't played a Taylor for a long time, but I do think the Martin playability is really, I won't say improved, because I haven't had much experience in the past, but I will say I feel they play really, in general, they play really, really well. And now with guitars like the new, what's it called? Keep talking about it. The SC13E, they're kind of going in that kind of Taylor direction, right? With that kind of bolt-on neck and the lower action. Have you played that guitar yet, the 13?
Yes, I did. Actually, I did. The day it came out, I had I did my own video for Maury's at the factory with that guitar, and I had actually I was aware of the project for a long time. I got to play a variety of the prototypes,
oh, wow.
And they went with the Road series because they wanted to make it as accessible as possible. It's an expensive guitar for what it is because of all of the technology that went into it and the design, and all that stuff to recoup their investment. I could have played what are standard series level construction of that design, not the traditional dovetail neck joint. You can't have that neck and that without their unusual neck configuration. But otherwise, all solid woods, high gloss finish.
So
traditional bracing.
Were they thinking of releasing the standard series, or is that something they're working on for the future? Which I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they won't. I don't think it'll ever be in the standard series because it doesn't have a traditional hand-fitted dovetail neck joint.
Oh.
I think they'll call it something else. It will be in, it'll be in. I'm hoping it will become the SC series. It'll be its own series,
like the
of different
deluxe or
price
something.
levels.
Yeah, SC deluxe or SC
Yeah,
Pro, SC Pro, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. The necks, talk about the necks. I really like the neck, and I really like the neck on the I can't believe I can't remember this. The new series that has all the modern technology that I've written all the reviews about, that this kind of neck first appeared on.
The Modern Deluxe.
Modern Deluxe, thank you. Modern Deluxe is based on the 1930 OM45 Deluxe in the factory, and in terms of the skew of the neck and the way that it's carved, and that's another, we can talk about that later, the asymmetry that they discovered. I was in the room when they actually discovered it on the old M, and I begged them for years to put it on all their OMs, but they only put it on the OM45 Deluxe until the Modern Deluxe came out. Modern Deluxe is not the same. It's got a modern heel, so as you go up the neck, it's not as fat as the old Martin is above the 9th fret. It's much slimmer and more like the rest of the other modern necks. But this other one is the SC neck is based on that, but it's got its own thing, the way that it's skewed. And they're both very comfortable. I would love to see them on more and more models. So, but going back to the Taylor thing, Taylor made the comfortable neck, started the revolution. Martin was always slow and late and traditional and slow catching up to modern trends. And so everything from the new body shapes, but what they call now the high performance neck that started on the Performing Artist series. That's a bit of confusion for people. The Performing Artist series has a performing artist profile. It's not quite the same. It was definitely designed to be more Taylor and Husson Dalton-like, more electric guitar-like. Tim Teal likes the modified low oval. He considers it A, a Martin invention, and B, a true acoustic guitar profile. So that's why they took the high performance, that taper that they used to call the performing artist taper, skinnier as you go up compared to other 1 3/4 inch Martin necks. They combine that with a modified low oval. They call it the high performance neck now. All came out of the fact that Olson, Husson Dalton, Bill Collins, Bob Taylor, they were all making a 1 3/4 inch neck that didn't get as wide as an old-fashioned neck. Kind of some irony to that now, because Hudson Dalton and Collins now are offering necks that are like vintage necks.
I know, that's what I was going to say. Like, it's so hard for companies. You've got Fender Acoustasonic, you've got Martin SC guitar. They release these new things, and of course we know Martin fans love the. One thing I love is the history. I love the history, and everyone's chasing the vintage, real old Martin guitars with all the history around it. They release something new for modern players, and they get a lot of a lot of flack for it, right? People are like, what are they doing? They're becoming Taylor. But of course, you have to move with the times as well. But to tie in with earlier, I mean, what was your true feeling about the SC? Like, be honest with me. What were you thinking? Oh, this is like a Taylor.
Well, I was honest. I was honest in I have a very extensive review.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. So just give me a summary.
I don't mean to. I wasn't calling you out for not having read it. It came out in January, but for me, it is designed as like you said. It's designed for about a different guitar. It's designed as a stage guitar to be plugged in. It's designed to be actually plug into your exact same rig as your electric guitar and all your pedals, and you can just play it. That was the idea. Right. So it does not perform as well as other Martin guitars as a purely acoustic guitar. If you put heavier strings on it, it would be much better. They purposely put really extra light strings on it that are plucked extremely low to feel like an electric guitar. One of the first things I would do is put 12s on it and raise the action up. If I was going to. And I would be interested in getting one of those guitars. It'd be a great guitar for touring around when you can only bring one guitar.
So do you think if they do a higher end series, it will have a better sound, like from what you've seen?
Oh, I know it will. I said, I've played multiple prototypes from the stages of them putting that project together. And I think the highest one I played was solid Indian rosewood and Sitka spruce and the whole thing. Yeah. I want one in mahogany. I would like to see I would like it to basically be style 18 in all respects except for the neck joint, and has to have that modern technology to use that kind of neck. I would buy one. If I had the money. I don't have the money right now, and I'm not going to be playing in public anytime soon. But yeah, I would absolutely love to have one.
I'm just going to call Maury's Music to reserve my SC13 Deluxe. Thanks, Maury. Okay. Now that is my dream. That's my dream. I play on stage. I love plugging in. Someone just mentioned the pickup. As you all know, I have a big fascination of pickups, which is one of my problems because I want the guitar to sound great unplugged and plugged. Now, I think they put that Fishman under saddle in the SC because, like you said, it's for plugging into high volume stages, distortion pedals, loopers. In fact, Craig Thatcher did the demo at NAMM, and he did exactly that. He plugged that guitar into a looper and a drive pedal, and he was trying to recreate that kind of thing of the modern, Ed Sheeran types. So I get it. But I would love, personally, because I love the stage guitars that sound great. I mean, my dream is a guitar that plays like that and feels like that, but sounds like the HD28. I want them to come together and also sound incredible on stage, like one of the best pickup sounding systems I've heard. That's really like the ultimate for me and probably for everyone. Whether we can get there, I don't know. Because will a guitar ever sound like an HD28? Well, no, because that's an HD28, right? But I'd like to get close to that. I want to strum that guitar and hear that.
An HD28 won't sound like an HD28 plugged in to me. They all sound like electric guitars to me. I finally kind of gave up and go with ease because the sound man and the entire chain matters. And you know, I've heard Neil Young be just shockingly great plugged-in sound, and he has the original one that they were making for a little while there. But I've heard the same guitars sound terrible
Yeah.
in other venues because the sound man just made them sound tinny.
EQ.
And they sound so. But the reason that pickup is in that guitar is because it's in the Rhodes series.
Yes.
So you're getting, this is what a lot of people don't understand. When Martin came out with Styles a long time ago, and just, I'll clear this up because there's a lot of misinformation about this. The old myth, if you will, that the style number was the price, that goes back to the very, very beginning when CF Sr. was making little tiny parlor guitars, and he would make one size in one style with one kind of trim. And it became a style 17 because it cost $17. By the 1850s, that was not the case anymore. And by the time the O was out, you were getting different sizes in the different styles, and the styles had to do with the trim. But it still meant that if you were getting an 18 or a 21 or a 17, you were getting, you could know what that meant in terms of what level of trim, what the woods were, and all that. In the modern era, his great-great-great-great-grandson, Chris Martin, has come up with the series idea. So it's not just style 15, it's the 15 series, 17 series, anything below the standard series. Standard series is where you get the traditional styles. And then there's other special series. And it's in the Rhodes series. And that means it comes with that pickup. When they come out, and they probably will, come out with things that are made higher up in the 16 series, it's going to have what they put in the 16 series. By the time you get up to standard level or above, and there's bound to be a NAMM special sometime that's in style 41 or 45 or whatever. I bet you it will happen.
Wow.
It's going to have the Aura system in it because that's their top system.
The new, I won't go into the pickups too much, but the new Aura blend with the Aura HD is really excellent. I just missed the body sensor, and I think for something like the SC, I personally would like to have the body sensor I can turn on and off because it's for stage and I'm looping and that modern kind of playing.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think they put the body sensor in because they listen to certain professional musicians and they go with what they say.
Yeah.
I think they realized the people who are going to be buying the modern deluxes, they're not those people.
Yeah.
They're going to be the more traditional
They're not gonna,
bluegrassers or whatever.
They're not going to slap the guitar if they've spent that much money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I said in my review. All right, so we move on to the questions then. Awesome.
Certainly.
I have a list here, and I'm going to go to the chat as well. In fact, let me go to the question I had. I don't want to forget our friends here. I got to find it. Was it Thomas Moore? Was it Chris? Hang on. Okay, Chris Hull. It seems like you prefer short scale guitars. Have you always preferred them? Any reason besides the ease of reaching the far fret?
No and no, because I was a OM man, really hardcore. I'm sure the guitar I grew up playing was a short scale. My very first Martin was what they call a Custom 15. That is what became, there's more than one dealer that claims to be the dealer that put in the order that made Martin put in these Custom 15. And it was essentially an HD 28V. It had a V-neck, 1/11/16 inch, herringbone trim, grained ivory binding, diamonds and squares. They started with closed tuners and eventually went with vintage tuners. The one I had closed tuners. But the long scale, big dreadnought body, V-neck, I wasn't expecting it to be so different. So then I went with a 0018 for a long time, from the 50s, until the vintage OM started showing up. Love the long scale, love the fact that OMs are so powerful in what I call mini dreadnoughts, not in the bass to treble ratio, but in terms of the power and what they will give out when you really dig into them. Short scale, you don't get that. It's a much more intimate experience. And I came out of a pile up in a high school football practice with my thumb on backwards, and I've broken multiple bones in this wrist and other sports-related things over the years. And as I got older, that began to matter a lot more. And also, I don't have long fingers, particularly my thumb. And when I was growing up watching Hendrix thumb fret the entire board and still chord and still do his stuff, and then watch Leo Kottke, whose scimitar thumbs are so long, he's playing his bass notes at the fretboard and he's fingering on the other side of the sound hole. And I saw Steve Stills play a whopping baseball bat Martin X, playing his basic C chord by fretting the G and the A string with his thumb. Once I realized these guys were mutants, then I didn't feel so bad that I couldn't actually do what they do. But short scale, if you don't have big hands, short scale can really help a lot, both in terms, not just the bending, the bluesy bending stuff, but those stretches, you know. If you try to play Lawrence Juber stuff on a long scale neck, I can't do what that on the short scale neck I can do more of it. So
yeah, I think I've had I've had like travel guitars, but I've only ever had, I had a Rain song that was short scale, and I really appreciated how easy it was to bend on that guitar. But I, in my head, I always want to go for long scale. In my head, it's going to sound punchier and full, you know, like more in your face. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's true. Actually, keep going back to the SC, but the SC they were saying has like the best of both. Is that true?
I was surprised. I wasn't prepared for it. I just knew originally that Martin was coming out with the first body size that was truly designed at Martin since the pre-war era and since the original 14 fret guitars. And I was surprised it was 13 fret. And what I loved about that, you wear it on a strap and it just stays there. It doesn't do this. It doesn't go back and forth. It feels like a short scale guitar, even though it's a long scale. I mean, when you're down in the cowboy chord area, but it's a little closer to the body, so it still doesn't have the same stress on the terminus of on the tendons in your shoulder and your elbow that you're used to on a OM size guitar. So yeah, I think that's a big selling point for it, that kind of comfort.
Do you think they would use Evo wire frets on those? Is that something that's only for deluxe guitars, or do you think that will come down the line eventually?
Oh, I'm sure it'll come down. I'm sure you could probably order it at the custom shop. You know, they're you can buy them on the open market. They're more expensive, but they're hard. You know, if you're not used to them, I found you play them for an hour and your fingertips kind of hurt a little bit. But I'm sure it's something you get used to.
Yeah, I wear frets a lot, so that's why I'm interested in that. Martin Roder says, we'll get off the SC soon, but the last question on the SC. Regarding the SC13, is there a true functional benefit with the new offset shape, or is it purely aesthetic? Personally, I'm not a fan of the offset shape with an acoustic guitar.
Well, there's a lot of acoustic guitars with offset shapes that are arch tops. That was a very common thing in the jazz world up around the World War II era. They're not exactly the same kind of offset. This is the practical thing is the comfort. It is, and that's what this really started with. I don't remember if it was Fred Green or Jeff Allen now off the top of my head, who said, I want to make this guitar. It may have been Fred. What he was talking about is he wanted an offset guitar that was very comfortable to play. And that's what that does.
Yeah, I think
the way that it rests against your body, the way that it sits in your lap, the way your arm comes over it, for whatever reason it's happening physically, it's noticeably more comfortable to play, particularly over a long session.
From what I've seen, that's Fred's baby. But next week I actually have Tim Teal on, and we're going to talk a lot about electronics and future stuff. So make sure you join us for that. That's next Wednesday. Right, I'm going to get to your questions. I will come back to the chat questions, so keep them coming and remind me if I miss anything. There's one there about amps. I want to get to that. But let's come to your questions. The first one is toasted wheat underpinnings. Now, I'm going to guess this is from the way you explain sounds and woods.
Sound.
Is that right?
But I've always been fascinated with how difficult it is to describe not sound but tone, musical tone, and I'm now convinced it goes back to evolution. Music evolved so late in our species that we did not have an inherent way to discuss this phenomenon of this invisible stuff in the air that fills air the way that smoke can fill air. And in fact, I often refer to the smoky rosewood Martin tone of Indian rosewood and how thick it is, almost like there's smoke in the air. And when I would do my reviews online originally in the old guitar forums before the unofficial Martin Guitar Forum was ever around, or my website, I had people who really liked my writing, and I had people who thought it was ridiculous. And one person said, all I need to know is it bright or warm? And I said, you're saying that like those are two sides of the same scale. Bright comes from the sense of sight. It's a metaphor. It's not even a sound. It's not even about aural. It's a metaphor for sight. Warm is a metaphor for the sense of touch. Even when you're talking about warm light, you're still using a metaphor toward the sense of touch because it's related to firelight and how warm it is to be around a fire. And so to me, you could say something's bright or warm, and you could say that about 35,000 guitars that don't sound at all alike. So I started trying to use metaphor that originally came from my Scotch whiskey reviews. Started using metaphor to try to explain stuff, using flavors, using stuff like this. And so to get to the point of that quote that even been used in a book, talking about tone, guitar book that I was not aware was happening. They didn't talk to me about it. I was trying to describe the CEO 5, which was Martin's first full-fledged Sapelli, whatever you would call it, back and sides guitar. 12-fret dreadnought, and that Chris Martin designed. And it was, as usual, it was his way, Martin's way of introducing something new on a limited edition, saying, see, why would we put this on this expensive limited edition if it wasn't, if it was something bad? So I was at Mandolin Brothers playing that guitar alongside a D18S, 12-fret South American mahogany guitar. And I set up in that review the metaphor that using bread, saying that if that thick Indian rosewood tone was pumpernickel bread, then mahogany would be like whole wheat bread. And I said then, because Sapelli has a drier, crisper sound to it, it would be like toasted wheat. And then later on, I referred to the whole wheat underpinnings of the voice, talking about that background radiation, not the front, what I call the top voice of the strings and the top, but the influence of that African mahogany back and sides. I referred to it as toasted wheat underpinnings and was just roasted on the forums for that for a long time. And people who don't know that story bring it up all the time, thinking they're teasing me about something that's very funny. But that's where it came from, and I still have a hard time. I still have to. I'm always pleased when people like the fact that I'm describing tone using those kind of poetic imagery and having them write me and say, I own that model, and I was never able to put it into words, but you absolutely nailed it, and that happens a lot. And what made me start my website, I was at the very first Martin Fest, playing probably with Maury, and somebody said, and that Todd Stewart Phillips, which was my directing name and my writing name back in those days, Spoons came out of the New York music scene, and he came over to me and he started in a friendly way berating me for making him buy very expensive guitars. Particularly a custom Brazilian Adirondack OM28V that Stan J had ordered a batch of. And he bought the specific guitar that I did that. And he said to me, I would never encourage someone to try to make a living as a writer, but have you ever tried making your living as a writer? Which is high praise. After he left, I found out he was John Bennett, the senior editor of The New Yorker, and a professor of journalism at Columbia, who's now retired now. And we became friends, and he bought guitars for me and gave me some really cool Dylan bootlegs that he's had for years, and we kind of bonded over our Bob Dylan fandom. But so to me, that's a pretty good recommendation. So I understand that just like movie critics, food critics, there's going to be critics that you that whose language that you do relate to and that you understand and that helps you. And there's going to be ones that you don't relate to and you don't have the same tastes or how they describe stuff doesn't fit.
Yeah, I get it, and you're a very articulate person, and I can tell that. And you do need ways to describe things. I have to admit, I'm probably guilty of just saying things are bright or dull. I don't have enough words. I find it very hard to, and I think a lot of people do, to express what they're hearing. And sometimes I even feel like it sounds different day to day, or sometimes I don't even trust myself.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, you say bright. When you say bright, you know what it means to you.
To me, yeah.
That's the problem. That may not be what bright means to me, or warm, or I mean, the opposite of warm is cool, and the opposite of bright is dark. And I will refer to things as being dark in tone, and particularly when you get into Macassar ebony, and African blackwood and stuff that's really inky in its what I call its undertone. That's another one. I used to describe undertone to me as the lowest harmonics, that it sound that they're below the highest fundamentals and the harmonics. They sound like, when it's reverberating out of a Martin, the body sounds like it's what I called undertone. I used to get a lot of grief for that until a professional audio scientist came on and said, "I hate to break it to you, you didn't invent that term. We've been using that term to describe the exact same thing as our labs, So I try to be as descriptive as I can. If I go a little too far, I think some people like that. Other people, roll their eyes at it. That's just the way it is.
Well, it's also the internet and forums. Sometimes whatever you do, you're wrong anyway. But I won't go down that road. But give me an example then, because I haven't played all the guitars you've played. But let's say my favorite Martin right now is an HD28. What words would you use to describe the sound of an HD28 then?
In generic terms, in the broadest terms, it's a very it's very warm, rich, and complex tone that is, but it has very lovely, complex high harmonics too that balance it out. It's almost like tomato ketchup, where they put a lot of sugar in it, they put a lot of vinegar in it, and they balance out, and you don't taste either one of them. So I think it's dark. It's certainly darker than a lot of mahogany guitars. I think some people and now that it's forward shifted scallop bracing, now that it's essentially the old HD28V, much deeper rumble in the body and much more wavery when you let a chord go and let it intermarry and all that. They find them, wonderfully resonant and complex and delicious. I find them very delicious.
I'm trying to think how I'd explain it. I just find those guitars incredibly resonant and loud, and I'm not even a fan of low end, and I don't understand when people call things balanced, but I just love that overall. I just know I love the overall sound of that guitar. But when I play live, I always cut the low end anyway. So maybe an OM would be better for me, or a smaller body is better on stage.
Sometimes you have to. Yeah, you have to. And OM might very well be for stage. I like what I call the Neil Young womp that they have, where I do the palm, you do thump, thump, thump.
Yeah, that thud, yeah.
And I like the old ones a lot. And I really like the old straight braced D28s, much more articulate, lot less of that wavery body resonance and echoiness going on. And every time I'm going to play them in a shop back in the day, I would tend to like the HD with the scallop bracing a little better. But when I'm with people, I routinely would play with somebody who has one. In fact, he bought it for me. In an ensemble, the straight braced cuts through better, I think. And you get that articulate top voice, similar to the way a triple O cuts through and is very focused, where an OM has that bigger, warmer, almost pillow of tone coming around it that in a group situation sometimes can it's not what you're really looking for.
Let's talk.
So when it comes to that, I'd say turn to the D18, because you cut out a lot of that chocolate cake thickness when you go to mahogany forward shifted scallop bracing. Let's
talk about VTS, because I've played a few guitars. I've played a few HD28s with VTS, and I find them kind of, well, this will sound stupid, but I find them vintage sounding. I find them a little bit kind of dull and lacking that kind of high end, that modern kind of bright sound. Do you
well,
agree
that's
with that?
fascinating because a lot of people say the opposite. Say they find them a little too shrill at first when they first start playing them. So, but of course, people hear differently too. You know, when you take hearing tests and stuff, very, very rarely you're going to find two people who hear all the same frequencies the same way. I find I think they do something unusual to the B string. There's something about the B string that there might be what you're talking about. It seems to be missing. This is what makes it different from an actual vintage Martin. An actual vintage Martin, there is this like soaring, singing harmonic or tone that really shoots off of the B string, and doesn't seem to be there. I have played, though, one of the very first VTS Martins, a OM28 Authentic, 1931, that Tom Moore, no, it's not Tom Moore, I'm sorry, it's not Tom Moore, it's another guy from Martin Fest. I can't think of who it is right now, but he brought it when it was brand new. He's brought it like every, and I got to play it like 3 or 4 years later, and it was noticeably different. So even though Tim and people like that will say, because of the VTS, the top has stopped, it's gone through the process, so it's not going to break in anymore. Clearly, there's so many things about that guitar and the glues and the other woods and all the joinery and all that stuff is going to continue to age, and it's going to continue to vibrate every time you play it. And so it was definitely a noticeable improvement in the tone of that guitar 3 years later. So it's not like the VTS freezes it, solid in place. What I hear from the VTS, I hear what seems like there's less surface. Here's metaphor again. It seems like there's less surface tension, just like there is on a liquid. Surface tension, and that insects can run across, and it takes more to get down. It takes more of your effort to get down into the voice of the guitar and get it to come out. When you do the VTS, it's almost like that's broken now, and you can you can go right into it, and so you get that vintage kind of openness and spatial difference. There's more depth to it that take longer. I personally like breaking in new guitars, so I've never had interest in buying a VTS Martin. I may someday as I get older and realize I have less time to break them in. But there's almost a crispness to it that I think Tim equates with Adirondack spruce, and I think other people do too. That is a drier sound than typical Sitka, and that really shows up in the modern deluxes. Modern deluxes really, with the other technology, take advantage of that and really turn that into a very vibrant tone. But I can understand why people would prefer a standard series over a modern deluxe based on tone alone, because taste is different.
It could just be me. I've played several guitars. Of course, all guitars are different, but the reimagined HD28 for me, when I use a very thick pick. I use these Jazz 3 XL. They're like I think they're like 1 mil. They're very thick, right? So when I dig into a chord, I'm a singer. I do a lot of heavy strumming. When I dig in and lay into that guitar, there's I'm not as articulate as you. It's just like there's like a powerful thwack with a lot of cut to it, and I find that's missing on other woods and VTS guitars as well. So have you got any thoughts on that? Would you say is that just how I hear that particular guitar, or?
I don't know. It's not something I've paid attention to necessarily, but I've not sat down and said, let me investigate this and look at it. So, and I haven't played a VTS guitar in a while. I don't have one here to really go at. So I can't really comment on it because I can't really explain why that might happen and how much of it is related to the specific, soundboard. And maybe yours just is quite resilient and really comes back. Those are the Martins I love. I love being able to play the stuffings out of them and have them say, "Is that all you got?"
Yes, yeah.
and really roar back out,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people will say, get an Addy authentic VTS guitar and you'll get that in spades. But I wonder, is that always true? Like, maybe I wouldn't like the VTS on it, or maybe I wouldn't like, I don't know. I think for that, you have to play a lot of guitars, right? You have to actually try them out and see what works for you.
And I think people have to try to remember, if they're anything like me, that new is rarely good at first, because typically, like just moving from your mahogany guitars after you've been playing them for a month to a rosewood or vice versa, what you first hear is what's not there, that you're used to looking for and what's satisfying in it. And then you start hearing what is there that wasn't there, and I'm not sure, but you play it for an hour or you play it for a day, and suddenly you're really starting to like it a lot. And you go back to your mahogany guitar, and it seems really boring and vapid because it doesn't have all that richness to it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think people experience the VTS the same way. I know people who bought VTS guitars, didn't like them, decided I'm going to stick with this and see, and then they're like, forget everything I said. I absolutely love this. So I think that's some of it as well.
Can I say, I find it very dangerous to grab two guitars and compare them, because I always end up appreciating the thing that I like in one, and then the other one doesn't live up to that, and then there's something in that the other one doesn't live up to. So that can be a problem if you're lucky enough to own several guitars. Like, if I just play my OM, I haven't got an OM, but say I played an OM for an hour and then picked up the HD28, my brain might say, oh, the OM doesn't sound as big as this guitar. But indeed, it's a different guitar, so you mustn't compare them. And that's something that
or vice versa. You'll say, oh my God, that's way too boomy. That's way too big. What happened to that beautiful balance? Because it's usually I like a guitar, and the new one is the one that it takes me a while to adjust to. We should probably say something about the vintage tone system, because a lot of people don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
It's something called torrefaction that's been around since the Viking days, where you heat wood in a low oxygen kiln, and in modern times they use high air pressure as well. And you're talking about temperatures where it would actually incinerate if there was oxygen present enough for it. And they used it to treat animal feed in the old days, and wood that was used outside in Scandinavia for planking and stuff, because it makes it very moisture resistant. And what they eventually found out was it is crystallizing the cellular interior. It's crystallizing the inherent moisture in the interior, and then that gives it, under the microscope, depending on how long you do it, it gives it almost identical properties to very old wood. So it's speeding up the aging process. Of course, it's not exactly the same thing. Nobody knows with the modern technology what they're going to sound like 80 years from now. So that'll be fascinating, though there are many violins that had it done to it in the early 1800s in a similar fashion. But it's supposed to accelerate the aging, make it sound like a guitar that you've been playing for years. And that's different companies. The Martins is a proprietary version. Michael Dickinson went over to Finland and studied and went to a symposium, I think, with some of the early guitar makers that were beginning to use the techniques. Dana Bourgeois had his own one going back years now. I forget what his is called, but different people have their aged tops, their toasted tops. They have different terms for it. It's all basically the same idea.
Yeah, and on paper, I should love that, but I'm frustrated that when I've tried it, I haven't really dug it, to be honest. Again, I want to try a few more guitars before I commit to saying that's how I feel, but it hasn't blown me away like I hoped it would, let's say.
Personally, I like it better on Sitka than Adirondack, because I like the sound of new Adirondack, even though it takes takes quite a licking before it really starts to open up.
I just had a question come in on my YouTube channel. I want to bring it up because it's kind of a good one.
Sure.
It's kind of a good one. It's a bit more about stage, but let's take this as a question in general. I'll open this up to the chat as well. Someone said to me an hour ago, I dislike when people say you cannot gig with something. If you like the way something sounds and isn't so cheap it will break on stage, you can play whatever you want to. 99% of those in the audience will never know, and the other 1% can't tell difference anyways. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel when you play a gig, you can play any old guitar, just take a cheap guitar and be done with it in case you break it? Or do you feel you should always play your favorite and most treasured possessions? What are your thoughts on that? Because people have different thoughts on this, I see online.
I guess my version of it is I've played less expensive guitars in certain venues, but they were still traditional Martins. I know that Denny Ryan, I think that was his name, if anybody remembers, correct me, was at Mandolin Brothers for years. He played one of the original DMs when he would gig in roadhouses and bars and stuff because he didn't want to put his guitars, his expensive Martins at risk. If somebody is happy playing in their Yamaha, and Yamahas, particularly we go back in the 70s and 80s, the Yamahas and the other Asian imports were much better guitars. The Alvarez's and were much better guitars than I like to find in a Guitar Center today. And but I agree when you're dealing with pickups and sound men and all that. Yes, you can probably get away with it. Last night, I don't know if anybody saw the beautiful John Prine tribute streaming concert that was on last night. Todd Snyder was playing an Epiphone copy of a black J200, I think was what it looked like. And he's got a lot more expensive guitars than that, but he likes that guitar. He wasn't even plugged in. He was playing through a mic as far as I could tell. And Epiphone's another one of those brands that, of course, in the pre-war era and World War II era were very high-end guitars. And now they've become, Gibson bought them and they became Gibson's kind of junior brand, but they're still really good guitars. And I would agree. It's like somebody saying you can't put ice in whiskey or you can't put, whatever. If you want to have your $200 bottle of scotch in 7-Up with, pomegranate seeds, if that's how you enjoy it, go ahead. I feel the same way about guitars. However, I find the special guitars, my guitars are inspiring when it comes to the music I create. And I'm inspired on stage when my Dreadnought, when I get that beautiful tone, even if that's not what the audience is hearing, it does it for me. And that's, that matters more to me.
I think I can see both sides. And obviously, if you have one nice guitar and you gig in rough dive bars and want to be careful, it makes sense to have a more affordable instrument in those venues. But I think, I see a lot of people say to me about pickups, it doesn't matter, everything sounds the same, whatever. For me, it's more the sound that I have. Like I want the guitar to feel nice to me, and I want it to sound good on stage for me. I know a lot of the audience don't really care whether I'm playing a $30 guitar or a $3,000 guitar, but I do. And that's the very reason why I have a YouTube channel, right? Because I like to talk about the fine details of these things. I'm not knocking the person left a comment. I totally agree with what they're saying. And indeed, I did it today. I was playing my guitars and wondering to myself, could I take one of my more affordable guitars out on stage and leave the other ones at home? Because I do like to keep things nice. But I think it comes down to the fact that I won't truly be happy to perform unless I'm playing the guitar that I want to be playing. So that's my thought. Then Maury said, play the guitar that inspires you. A performance has to be fun, and a good responsive guitar is key. It doesn't have to be your most expensive, but it has to be the right one. I think that's a good answer, Maury. Good job.
Absolutely. Good job, Maury. One of the most fun, wonderful to play guitars I ever got my hands on was an old Fender F15 that was 70s, probably maybe 80s. Probably around there. And it was a little grand concert, a little smaller than a Martin 00 probably. Fantastically fun guitar to play. And did it have the ring and resonance and all that of a solid wood guitar? Not at all, but it was certainly good enough for most people to go to the park with and play their guitar, and I liked so much the person actually gave it to me eventually who had owned it. But it was already old and pretty beat up by the time the neck was going, and it didn't last very long. There's definitely people out there. Look at Woodstock. Go to watch Woodstock. Look how many no name, almost every acoustic guitarist you see and the Woodstock footage is a little no-name thing. I mean, the Harmony Sovereign will be like the fanciest thing you see, except for the big superstars who could afford Martins. Except for Joan Baez, Carl Nash and Young. Rich Havens was playing his guild. I think almost everything else you see are Yamahas and those kind of guitars. That's all those kids could afford. So go for it if you can.
Maury has a very nice OM, and that's well played in. So it's got the stage. It looks, I can't stand one ding on a brand new guitar, but when it's worn in that much, it looks really cool.
For me, they are now the I hate them, but they are now the souvenir. I had a beloved guitar. First thing, somebody in the Song Circuit Martin Fest turned around and I was talking to somebody, turned around and put his tuner right into the top, put a big gouge in it. But it makes me think of that wonderful 4-day, all night party that I went to, that Martin Fest. So, and Maury's guitar, I had an OM28 V2, it was a VR that I absolutely loved. It was a freakish, really super low profile, right when my thumbs were getting bad and the V-necks were starting to cause me trouble. Freakishly low profile. It was amazing. It got out of final inspection, and when I took it to the factory, they saw nothing on it that implied that it had been tapered down, and they actually made a custom MC18 for me based on that neck. They actually copied that neck, and that guitar now belongs to a certain someone in England, of that who's influenced the album Lost in Haunted Ways, which you can buy at my website, tspguitar.com, and One Man's Guitar, which is one man's with a Z, because One Man's with an S the website was already owned by somebody. So,
and if anyone's wondering about your nickname, it's because your initials are TSP, like teaspoon, right?
That's correct, and I didn't understand that at first. A guy named Henry Tenney, Hank, was the lead singer of my 1990s band, the Cheese Beads. He started calling me Spoon, and I didn't understand that at first. He said, that'd be a good name for you. And other people picked up a little bit, and I was resistant to it at first, and I figured it out. And I was Todd Stewart Phillips in the writing and theater world. I mentioned this to you privately, but Todd Phillips, the movie director who did Hangover and those kind of movies, he was at NYU Film School when I was running an acting company down the street. Our posters would show up in the same windows. We had the same doctor for a while. He got in the union first, so I went with the George C. Scott, or the 3-name thing. And but Spoon started caught on, and enough people said, your name doesn't seem to fit your music, and so I eventually adapted to Spoon. So.
But to go back, you did take a nice Martin to Martin Fest. You did get a ding in it, but it's a nice memory. So you would take an expensive guitar to a performance person.
Yeah, and when you go to Martin Fest in some of the private sanctums, there are guitars that, truly serious vintage stuff. And I understand their owners don't bring them out in the common rooms and stuff. You have to go in their room and you put it in your lap. And I made one of our good friends turn white as a ghost when he handed me one of the Martin employee guitars that was made by what we used to call the Pearl ladies, back when the Pearl work was done just by all these ladies with delicate fingers. It was her employee guitar, and officially you weren't allowed to put Pearl on an employee guitar. Back when every employee was, after you were there for so long, you were allowed to, in your spare time, make a guitar.
Oh, wow. And
C.F. Martin III had a big hand in making the guitar for her and all these people. Beautiful it was either a 0045 or 0045, I forget, even though it said 28 in the stamp. And he handed it to me, and he had just received it, and he was talking to somebody about it, and I winked over at David Musselwhite, and I went, oh, and like hit my hand against the table, and like gasped, and the blood just fell out of his face.
That's just me. That's just me. Oh dear, yeah, vintage guitars. Yeah, I had one of the OM28 John Mayer guitars. They only made like 500 of them, and I sold it because it didn't have the wide nut, and also I was just scared. I was just scared it would crack or something and lose its value. When you buy.
Well, I can get you one that's online right now for I think $12,500.
Yeah, but no one's going to pay that.
You
No
know,
one's going to pay that. Mine was 7,000, and then 2 years later I sold it on for what I paid for it. I didn't make any money, sadly. But now, 2 years after that, they're up there for 12,000, and they've got dings in them. Mine was perfect. So you're going to
did
say
you buy yours used?
I bought it used from a guy, a friend of mine in England picked it up used from a guy, hadn't played it. It sounded incredible. I do believe that 10-year-old guitars do sound better. That OM sounded amazing. Also had the what top is that on there? The Engelmann spruce.
Yeah, Engelmann.
It's got the narrow nut that put me off a bit. Like I said, I've had a couple of guitars crack in New York City, just from careless nights of leaving them out and the radiator comes on full blast and just dries it out. I didn't want to take any risks, so I sold it on. But I'm sorry, 12,000. I mean, I can say this now because it's just me and you. $12,000 for that guitar. It's just a standard series guitar, but it's got John Mayer's thing on it. You can order that same guitar from the custom shop without the bling and with your bling for less than half the money. You'd be pretty crazy to buy that guitar for 12.
Well, I mean, but collectors are a funny breed.
Yeah, I'm not knocking it. It's a collector's
Jimmy
item.
Buffett.
Yeah.
The HD18 Jimmy Buffett. It went through a similar process. The Gordon Lightfoot D18 Gordon Lightfoot, which is even more like a D18. No, it's also Engelmann. For inexplicable except for fandom, and then collecting. Once they start going up, then they become collectible items. And so I understand. I believe the owner of that expensive Mayer has two, so he's selling one.
You know what?
And he's a huge John Mayer fan.
It's probably the guy that bought mine because I think he was a nice guy, but I think he was possibly a collector. And why not? I totally get it. If I had let's talk about collectible Martins because it is essentially an OM28 with Engelmann top. But the fact that they only made say 404, the fact that it is a John Mayer model, they'll never make them again. Of course, that adds value, and I'm a John Mayer fan. I totally get all that stuff. Actually, you know what happened a couple of years ago? I was on Guitar Center. Used section, and they had one of the George Martin Beatles M30.
Oh yeah,
they had one, and I emailed them. They said it's mint. The guy never played it, and it was basically priced the same as an M36 is now. And I didn't buy it, and I really regret not buying that guitar just for the whole Beatles thing. And they didn't make. Have you ever played one of those? They didn't make many of those either.
Oh yeah, I've played multiple ones. I'm not a huge fan of European spruce on mahogany so much, but it really works on that guitar. And when it comes to Engelmann, I think Engelmann sounds the least impressive when it's brand new, but it becomes so complex. It's so beautiful. It's softer, so it doesn't respond to the big strum as well. You don't get the same kind of oomph and power you get out of the other spruces, but it's so angelic. It's really beautiful. But it takes like Adirondack, it takes a good 2 years before it really takes off, but then it just never stops getting better and better and better and better.
Yeah, I'm just looking at those John Mayer guitars. You got. Of course, I'm thinking, why didn't I keep it? I could have made $5,000 on selling that thing. But I'll be very surprised if they sell at that price. But I hope they do. What I'd like to do one day is order that same spec as a custom shop. With the Engelmann top and the wider nut, the 1 3/4 inch nut is what I would do for that guitar.
With the high performance neck, you want the high performance neck.
Yes,
No.
unless they bring out a SC guitar in the 28 style, I'll just buy that instead.
Well, I'm hoping they won't now, but I'm hoping they will allow either the modern deluxe neck profile I really like it a lot. When they did the old OM45 deluxe, that $10,000 guitar, they did that's a story I can tell very quickly. I was in the custom shop office. That the actual 1931 was there. And we were playing it, and I was talking about why were the 1930 OM special? What was it? Did the person die that carved the necks? Did it get promoted? And they turned it over to some big German with big giant hands, and he started making much fatter necks, or was it just because they thought the necks were the 14 fret necks were too slender and shallow? At any rate, it was the most comfortable neck, and they went and got a gadget, this proprietary gadget, and they brought it in, and they stuck it on the neck that copied like about 4 frets, and it displaced and gave a perfect shape of what it was displacing, the shape of the neck. And everybody was surprised to see how lopsided it was and how the bass side was much bigger and rounder than the treble side, and it dropped off really quickly. And then they went and they got the Mike Seeger's 1931 OM28 they're going to use to make the OM28 authentic, put it on there, and it was even more lopsided. It looked like the Elephant Man. It had this huge bulbous bass side and almost no treble side. It ramped off really fast. And I didn't really like the feel of that neck as much as the 45. And I begged them to start putting that neck on their standard series OMs. And when they came out, they chose to only do the skewing on the, because they're hand carving these necks. They only did it on the $10,000 OM45 Deluxe. And it's not exactly, I play them side by side. It's impossible to really make a neck exactly like another neck, but it's pretty close. And they promised me I could order, I have it in writing from Jeff Allen, they promised I could order a custom with that neck shape someday. So I'm going to hold it to them maybe one of these days. But I'll take, if they'll let me do the Modern Deluxe neck instead, I'll take that. But
so you have ordered the custom shop. So how is that process? And for people that don't know?
It depends. It used to be different. It's easier to do now than it used to be. My favorite custom shop story is I was at the NAMM day, and Tim was taking me through the new models. Maury was there, and I said, okay, it's been 1 year since you guys started using Madagascar rosewood. Does that mean we're allowed to, because they used to say something had to be out for a year before they would let you do it in the custom shop. Does that mean I'm allowed to order a custom Madagascar rosewood Martin? And he said, I don't know. And this girl was walking by, this young lady, and he said, would you ask Mr. Fair to come out here? And Bob Fair, the manager of the custom shop, came out and saw me and had this look on his face like, now what? And so he came over and he said, Bob, are we going to let people order Madagascar rosewood guitars from you guys? And he took a pencil out from behind his ear and he took a little jotter pad out of his pocket and he said, what do you want? And what I wanted was the Madagascar rosewood Lawrence Juber in short scale with the vintage golden era heel, which makes the modified V-neck a little tubbier as you're going down the barrel. And my friend Maury was a dealer. He happened to be standing right there. Bob went back and typed some stuff up, came back, talked to Maury. They came up with a price, and that was that. And in the old days, typically in those days, you'd go to your dealer would have to go to them, Martin would go back to the dealer, and it would take forever. They've definitely streamlined it. They modernized the whole custom shop idea. You can call up Maury, give him what you want. You're going to get a quote much faster, and you'll get a quote sheet, and you will be able to look at the quote sheet and decide. And you can even nowadays, you can even say stuff like, well, if I don't go with Waverly's, how much it'll be, and it's not a big pain for them like it used to be to change a quote around, saying, okay, well, it's going to be this much less to do that. So yeah, I've had three custom Martins, and only one of them, the original MC18, didn't really do it for me. I sold it in Worthing, actually, down by Portsmouth or down by Brighton, to a guitar shop that unfortunately didn't survive the economic crunch. And since I was selling it in England, I got all of my money back. So
that's nice when that happens. It must be scary to order a custom shop, though, and have to wait 6 months and you haven't played the guitar. I wonder if anyone's ever done that and then kind of regretted what came out. I don't know.
I know there's people who will always be that way because particularly if you're going out on a limb and what you think something might sound like, and it may not be what you hoped it would be. But if you're really talking about the basic stuff of trim and this kind of cutaway, or, most people are educated enough when it comes to spruces and back and side woods and bracing and stuff to have a pretty good idea of what they're going to go for. And most people love the fact it's unique. This is something that I designed or helped design. Custom Shops actually is very good at working with the dealers too on warning them saying, uh-oh, we kind of caution against this. This is why I don't think you should do that. And they go back to the customer. And, so if they see anything that they're afraid was not going to work structurally or it's going to end up causing problems. Like the one guy who ordered a rosewood top.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Martin suggested not doing it, as my understanding, but they never heard back from the customer. So apparently his D28 with a rosewood top was a success in his mind.
Wow. So they'll offer their advice, but I guess essentially, you can do whatever you want. That's it. Yeah, very interesting. Wow. We had someone, I think it was Chris Hull, was talking about the GPC shape. I was a fan of that shape as well. Again, playing on stage with the cutaway and everything. Do you think that this new guitar, the SC13 shape, do you think that's going to replace the GPC shape?
I don't think so, because I don't think unless they adapt it to a 14 fret guitar, you can't have the SC without the futuristic digital printer neck configuration thing. So the GPC is again catching up to the modern era and finally putting out a small jumbo. And obviously it's closely copied from Taylor size 14. And this really goes back to, I think it was Ryan, what's his first name? I forget now. Kevin Ryan, I think, might have been the person credited with coming out with the first modern, what they call small jumbos. Other people say you really have to go all the way back to, I think it's the Gibson 185 or something that was in the 50s was the true small jumbo. But Taylor was the one that Taylor built the Model T. Taylor beat the one that took off and became very popular. And it's understandable. It is a very versatile Swiss Army knife kind of guitar for people who don't like big, boxy dreadnought jumbos. And of course, anytime Martin is going to do something with their bracing and their neck joints and all that, it's not going to sound like anybody else's. So it's still a genuine Martin in terms of its sound. I think it has a much more there's a massive body, aural body in the mid range that you don't hear out of the OMs and the triple O's and to a certain extent the dreadnoughts. It's definitely its own sound. And my favorite of them was the straight braced GPC 28 that they came out with just briefly, and then they put scallop bracing on it, but I really like that. And I've had letters from people who bought one used based on my saying that, and they really liked it too. But I have a very much a Martin ear, traditional Martin ear, and I don't find the GPC sound to be a traditional Martin sound. It's a new Martin sound. Yeah. And I understand why they're popular, and they sell like hotcakes. It was a totally great idea for them. It's been a very successful thing for them.
Yeah. At least, can you still buy a GPC 28 right now?
I don't think so. They were revamping the line. They even got rid of their electrified OMCs and stuff. I think part of it they're pulling back economically. I think Chris even spoke about this. If he didn't anticipate how bad the international financial crisis was going to be, and he did a great job of not laying people off, and he did all that stuff. But they really overdid their inventory for a while. So I think they're pulling back, and they're going to obviously be coming out with electrified OMCs at some point. I think they're pulling back and reevaluating. And they've always done that. They've always come out with things for a while, and then they go away, and then they come out again, and they go away, and in new evolving shapes and sizes and amounts.
Thomas Moore said, "Get the Silver Sky. It's awesome." I got one when they first came out. I didn't like it very much.
Tom said, "A Silver Sky." What is a Silver Sky?
It's the PRS Strat. Basically, so John Mayer had a signature Strat with Fender, which I owned. I owned one of those. I really liked it. Don't have it anymore again. But the Silver Sky is a much, like PRS guitars, very well made, great guitar. I was actually looking at them the other day, but it's got some things like kind of plastic kind of tuners and for me, I'm very modern thinking with the pickups. I'm very traditional with the guitars. Like when I wanted a Strat, I wanted a real vintage like Beatles Strat, with the old pickups and that. That's just what I wanted from it. I do have like a modern guitar as well, like a Music Man type guitar, but I think it's good to have that as well. But yeah, I'm not against the Silver Sky, but it wasn't. Maybe because I owned the Fender version of his guitar, I didn't kind of gel with the PRS version. Again, I'm thinking in my head, I'm thinking Fender, Strat. But, it's a lot of this is in the preconceptions we have in our own minds as well, I find. But yeah, excellently made guitars, and they stay in tune, which is very important, more than some vintage Strats do. Then again, setup is everything, and I find with guitars like PRS and Martin now as well, they tend to come very well set up out of the box, which is important. Some guitars you have to then turn around and take them for a setup. Actually, that's a good thing with Maury. He can check the guitar before he sends it to you. You haven't got to take a pot luck and just get what you're sent, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to bash other dealers per se, and and I have a good friend who works as a very learned guy who works for Guitar Center. But by and large, the bigger the store and the more inventory and the more employees they have, there's definitely plenty of stories of people getting guitars from the big industrial dealers, and they take it to a local luthier, and they're like, "What did they do to this? This is just all wrong." And I'm not a big fan of the Plek because I'm used to high action. I'm used to older guitars. I'm used to never taking my guitar in to get work done, and the Pleks. When I go and I do my videos on NAMM Day at Martin in the summer and the winter, they get very buzzy to me because I'm used to playing really hard, and I have to really lay off of them to keep the strings from hitting the frets, and so they're a little too low for me. Though I understand people want ease and they want smooth and they want, that's a part of the whole experience now. But because I don't tend to play, I don't like 13s on dreadnoughts, I like 12s, but I have to have higher action because they are looser. And I know Tom's probably head spinning around that I'm suggesting putting 12s on a dreadnought, but
yeah,
yeah,
I get that too. I also get in trouble when I unboxed a guitar on my channel and I pulled out the the truss rod tool, and I often find that the neck is like shifted, and I just put it in there. I just give it a crank, and I feel it plays better and sounds better when it's straighter. I need a touch of relief because I play so hard. But I find I always have to do that, and people always say, "Oh, you're too rough. You should do it more gentle and do a bit, do it weight." Do
a quarter turn.
I know. I get in trouble. You know what? It's fine. I've never had any problems doing it. I think I make it look rougher than it is. I'm just like.
I have to say, you mentioned the Strats.
I'm very careful.
Quick Strat,
I'm very careful.
Strat stories. I own a very nice blonde wood Strat. 70s Strat. They got stolen in my internship when I was in London, so that was sad. And then just yesterday, a friend sent me a text of her daughter's guitar that she got from her uncle, and it looks exactly like the Strat that Clapton played on Layla. It's that sunburst, that pickguard, those pickups, and it has one of the string. What do you guys call those? Up at the headstock, you have one or two, the string guides, whatever they're called. It's got one string guide. So it may just be, and it's a rosewood fretboard. So it might be, I think maybe Clapton's was ebony, I don't remember now. But it might be a vintage reissue. It looks in too good a shape to be a real 50s Strat, but it certainly looks like it. It'd be quite a princessly gift for that girl to have that guitar.
I need to correct myself because someone's gonna complain at me. I'm not that aggressive. I believe in there's a whole thing about setups. And there's two things I've done with my Martin guitars. I feel very comfortable with them. I always adjust the truss rod very carefully. I'm not super careful, but I'm gentle. I always have to do that. I feel it makes them sound and play better. I'm not against ordering those blank saddles from Maury because they're already cut. I just have to sand the bottom of them to the height that I like. And that's one thing I like about those saddles from Maury as well. And I did that, and someone told me I was going to mess up my intonation. But those Martin saddles come ready to go, and generally they work fine. You can just sand the bottom, make sure it's flat, and you're good to go. So anyway, whatever I do, I'll get in trouble with some people. That's fine. So let me see. I've come back to chat. I'm going to come to one of yours now. I'm going to find a good one. Okay, here's a good one for you. Why might a 45 sound different to other Martins?
Well, that goes into the entire thing about woods and pearl and whatever. But the reason the 45 is more resonant than a 28 or 41 or 42 is because, and Dick went into this a little bit, when you're going to put in purfling around the edge of a top, so you have a spruce soundboard that's basically works similar to a diaphragm of a drum. And right where it attaches on the cedar kerfing inside the guitar, you cut this big trench. So right there, it's even thinner. So you have this piece of, if you go zoom in, you have this big piece of board, and right where it's attaching, you're cutting it way down, so it's even thinner. So the energy that's going across the bracing and going across the soundboard is hitting the kerfing and the side at a very shallow place. And then you're inlaying either a wooden sidewalk, brick sidewalk if it's herringbone, or very long slats of black and white plastic or wood fiber that are all, and that energy has to go through this stuff. But you're making that top more flexible because of that. And only Style 45 has the sides and the back have that trench cut in it. So the sides and the back actually respond to physical energy and flex more easily. And so you're getting more vibration, takes less vibration to get that rosewood moving. And so it's giving off sound waves in a way that the other guitars that don't have that trench cut in the edges coming out. And the same thing can be said with abalone. Abalone is a hugely unusual material. It is these layers of woven minerals that are in different arrays, and this bizarre glue that the animal puts into them to glue them together. All of the modern body armor that they invented for soldiers was discovered from studying abalone. It's an unusually absorbing material. And I know Dick and some other people say if it has any benefit, it's probably to the negative because it's going to absorb stuff. But when I was haunting the guitar stores, I started playing the 28s to the 45s. I kept thinking the 45s were going to be better, 41s because they're more expensive, and then the pearly stuff. And I always liked the sound of the 28s more. And there seemed to be this weird extra high-end, I used to call it jangle until I realized that's a negative connotation. They sounded jangly to me in a way that the 28s never did. And it wasn't, I'm saying it sounds better because it's a 45. I thought the 28s sounded more woodier and less of that sonic tinsel stuff. And I've come to appreciate it since then. But I definitely hear it, and when I would talk to people in the shops, and they wouldn't know why I was asking them, listen to this and then listen to this. Sometimes I had them turn their back and ask them to describe it. They heard it too, different too. And all you had to do was pick up a 000 28 Eric Clapton and a 000 42, exact same guitar, same neck, same bracing, same everything, except for the pearl. There's no 000 42 and Clapton that sound identical. They just don't. And I know other people don't believe me.
I had my hands on a reimagined D42, and it sounded quite modern, loud, bright, the things that I like, more so than any other guitar. I've also had an HD28 Retro that sounded amazing too. But I thought, okay, maybe the grain of the wood and things are affecting the sound. That's why this guitar sounds a notch above the other ones. And I can justify the price. But I then went into a guitar center a few weeks later and played a D45, and I didn't like the sound of it compared to the other guitars at all. But again, it could just be that guitar. I mean, it could be old strings, it could be setup, it could be that particular guitar. I think every guitar definitely has its own voice, right? But that's one thing that I really wanted to ask you about. That whole, is the 45 worth the cost over the standard series? I mean,
well, as I mentioned in the chat in Maury's thing the other day, was you're paying for the labor that went into it. So in some respects, it's a luxury item. Just the same way people will go buy the exact same thing at Bloomingdale's rather than Macy's, so they can say they bought it at Bloomingdale's and pay that. There is that mentality to it to a certain extent. But there's also the beautiful craftsmanship. Chris Martin loves the pearl inlay stuff and loves the amazing craftsmanship that goes into it. It's understandable that you're going to find a D45 you don't like the sound of, because each piece of spruce is different. There's no guarantee that that piece of spruce is going to, but you don't know what it's going to sound like a year from now either. So it could, there is such a thing as sleepy spruce. A lot of people say Sitka, particularly if it hasn't been played for a long time, it needs a little time to wake up. And I've played total duds at Mandolin Brothers back in the day that somebody bought by the time I left because it was covered in dust and it was dead as a doornail. And I played it for a while and woke it up. And by the time I left that day, somebody actually bought the guitar. But also with the 45s, nowadays more than any other time, the HD28, the D41, the D42, and the D45 are all essentially the same guitar, same bracing. There used to be the 42 was the only one that had forward shifted scallop bracing. The 41 and the 45 had, and HD28 all had the same, but I think D41s always sound very, very vibrant, and I used to call them sunny sounding compared to a 28. The 42s had a bigger bass rumble because of the forward shifted bracing. Now they all have the same bracing. So the best, at no other time is it better to go into some place with fresh strings, same strings, have people do blindfolded tests. What's the difference? And then do double blind and see how many people pick out the differences, because everybody hears differently. And that D45 you didn't like, somebody else might be their favorite guitar because that's what they hear and what they like.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I know what I'm looking for now, and I think that's one of the things to know. You got to know what you're actually looking for with these things.
So it doesn't have it. If it doesn't have it, it doesn't have it.
Yeah, yeah. Thomas Moore, sitting here stringing up my D18 CW. That's a Clarence White, 184 of 282. I just looked that up. Awesome, 282. I found when we were talking, I went off on a tangent. While you were talking, I was looking up my John Mayer guitar. I found it. It was listed at $13,500. They removed the listing. So I presume what happened was somebody contacted them and offered cash, probably. But it didn't mention the marks on the bottom of the guitar. But they were so faint, I imagine what they did was they buffed those out, got it like mint, and then sold it on. So, again, I'm not knocking the collectible thing. Collectible things in life are always worth more money. And the looks of things are worth more money too. I guess if you don't like the look of the 45, you certainly shouldn't buy one, right? If you like the look, if you love the look of it, then that is as valuable to some people as the sound of it. Because guitars aren't just about the sound. I know with Martin, we're often drawn to the tone and that big kind of sound, but it's also to do with the looks of the guitar as well, right?
They're works of art.
Yeah, definitely.
They're still handmade guitars, despite the various CNC stuff. They're still handmade guitars.
Yeah.
And you can also argue that the grading of the wood has stayed the same, but the wood isn't as good as it used to be. That's how they went through with the Brazilian at the end of the 60s and stuff. There was stuff showing up on 28s that would have only shown up on a 21 up before the 1960s. And the 21s always got the weirder looking rosewood. And Chris's granddad was extremely conservative about that. He wanted straight, and he rejected all kinds of wood until it became impractical professionally to do that. Chris has done a spectacular job of walking the tightrope between the tradition and the legacy and the modern businessman idea, and developing new audiences and new customer bases. And the D45 is going to have what is coming out of the acclimation chambers, and some of that stuff been aged seasoning for a very long time, and it's getting the best wood. Are you going to find a 42 and a 28 that have wood that would have never appeared on a 42 or a 28 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Yes, that's going to happen. That's just the reality of the supply, what's available these days.
I think of that sometimes when people say, I want a D28 because that's what Paul McCartney played Blackbird on. I mean, that a D28 now is very different to a D28 that Paul McCartney played in the Beatles, right? Very different guitar.
But Martin doesn't want you to know that necessarily when you're buying a guitar. They don't want you to remember that.
Well, that's why they make the what's it called now? The Authentic series, which are very, very expensive, right?
Yes, they are, and they use Madagascar rosewood for that because it's as close visually as you can get to Brazilian, and they do overlap tonally. I think overall Madagascar sounds like the brightest, chimiest Brazilian, and Brazilian goes down into much darker and thicker sounding stuff that I look for in Guatemalan rosewood and cocobolo and stuff like that. The Guatemalan is not nearly as now that I have a Guatemalan rosewood Martin, it's not nearly as complex as Brazilian in terms of their harmonic layout. Brazilian rosewood is the 64 cran box.
I jumped on a train, Long Island train, to Sam Ash headquarters 2 years ago because they had one of those. They had a limited edition D28 Brazilian. Do you remember that? It's like 15 grand. It was basically, again, I'm not knocking it. It was basically a D28 but with Brazilian on the back and sides. That put the price up, by $12,000. So I wanted to play that, but again, I mean, it's difficult though as well, because when you go to like a big warehouse or even a store, it's hard to really get a feel for the guitar. But again, to me, that's not worth the upcharge, but to somebody else, it is. That was also collectible. It was limited edition. So there you go. If you're into collecting guitars, obviously it's a good investment, I presume. Thomas Moore. Okay, we had some questions about strings. So I've tried different brands of strings. I've always come back to the Martin strings. I do like them. When they changed them, they did change them a little bit, but I like them, and I didn't really want to go down the rabbit hole of strings either. But someone said, have you ever mixed the strings, like the different gauges together to create your own set of strings? And what gauge strings do you use on your guitars now?
I typically use lights. I think I have 13s on my Dreadnought right now because it's got a glued-in saddle and it's really buzzing. It's actually getting quite buzzy, and I can't figure out why. I haven't tried to set it up yet. This was a conversion that was done by Brothers Music, do spectacular, take an old beat up Sitka top Brazilian Martin and turn it into it's got a 1930, it's got an extremely authentic Adirondack top, a modern neck though, but it's gotten buzzy and it's going to need something. It probably needs a taller saddle, and so I'm using 13s to bring the strings up a little bit. For years, I used a mix set. I used Martin Marquis, which have the silk wrappings, which I've felt did actually change the sound, and they filtered out some high-end shrillness that I sometimes don't like, that can come from bone saddles, and I play 80/20s almost exclusively. I think they sound really bright when you first put them on, but after about 4 days, they mellow out, and I think they become very transparent, and I feel like I'm hearing the wood more, and I think phosphor bronze adds a tonal enhancement stuff that belongs to the string that I don't necessarily like. I think they're really good for making mediocre sound guitars sound a lot better. I don't think really great sounding guitars necessarily need them. But I started using mixed sets with medium for the unwound strings and the E, because I play in DADGAD a lot and open tunings, and I can drop those down. So it's Lawrence Juber's set, which is unfortunately a retro set. I'm not a big fan of the retros, except on mahogany guitars. But he plays, his sets are 56, and then whatever the light gauge, A, G, and D strings are, and then it's a 17 and a 13, because he does the same thing, constantly dropping them down, and you get more tension out of them when you're dropping them down. So I did that for years. I would buy 2 sets of strings, and I put them together like that, and end up giving the strings away or throwing them away. Newtone, the English string maker, they used to make that kind of DADGAD gauge. I don't know if they still do. They sell them that way. I think there's more than one company that offers that as a particular set.
Okay, all-time favorite Martins, and I've got another question for you. So, do you not own any other brand apart from Martin guitars?
That's correct. I have years ago I had a Dana Bourgeois mahogany OM, and I had a Collings OM 1A. And when Chris Martin came out with the OM 18V, I bought the very first one that arrived in New York City and sold the other 2, and also sold my old 0018. And for a long time, I was an OM guy, big wide necks, wide strings. Those were 2 and 3/8, so that was a really wide thing. And that's when I really started getting a lot of tendonitis issues, unfortunately. And so I actually like the 2 5/16 as my favorite string spacing. Now that I went short scale and 1 11/16 inch nuts, I've adapted back to the old 2 1/8. And it does get a little cramped, it does get a little stuff. But when I was playing with the Paul Yukon trio, Paul Yukon is a retired Broadway actor here in New York, and me and Frank Krupet were recruited to be his sidemen, doing Fats Waller stuff, Duke Ellington stuff. I really needed the short scale and the skinnier neck to do all that kind of jazz chord stuff, and that's what I'm sticking to. I don't move from neck to neck the way that some people can.
What I'm alluding to is that some people, including myself at times, I mean, I have different guitars now because either I'm working with them to make reviews, or just because I like them, or but I mean, I am very passionate about Martin guitars, you can tell from the channel. But I see in other people and myself at times, there's this loyalty, and there's this fact that because so and so played a D28 Martin, you have to play a D28 Martin. How deep do you think there's truth to that? Do you think that the legacy and the history
I don't
of Martin...
think it's truth to that. No, I don't.
No?
I would love to have a Taylor Leo Kottke 12-string from the first year of production, or I think it was the first year where the signature was on a different fret. And I love that we used to play that. You go into a guitar shop and you played one of those guitars and you drew a crowd just noodling around because they sounded so. And those were tuned down to C sharp. They were actually, they were tuned a step and a half down. And you could have it set up to play normal tuning, but his was always in C sharp or D, and so they sounded spectacular. The Martin sound is the Goldilocks just right for me. Santa Cruz is, to me, a thicker undertone, thicker, fuller undertone, much thinner spider web, thin tinsel trebles, different kind of dovetail neck joint sound. Gibson's dovetail neck joint sound, people love them. Really quick decay. It's a primarily about the notes, and then the room that's made behind it, and but a very clear, airy sound with you get a kind of a fat bass punch out of them, but it's like a bass drum go boom boom boom. You don't quite get that ethereal Martin interwoven sound. The dovetail neck joints guitars, very straight notes that stay in their lanes. They don't waver a lot, so you're getting very pure straight notes like out of a Collings or a Goodall. And some people don't like Martins. They consider it a flaw because Martins don't hold the pitch. Most dovetail neck joints guitars don't hold the pitch. It kind of wavers around, even when you're trying to tune. You'll get on the pitch and then it drops off really quickly and just dances around it. Dovetail neck joint guitars like Taylor's and stuff hold those fundamental notes, and sometimes with really great sustained. Husson Daltons, like Husson Dalton and Bourgeois, to me, sound more alike than either of them sound like a traditional Martin, even though they're still, in almost all of the respects, very traditional Martin based. Some of them have radius tops, all that stuff. So yeah, to me, it's the Martin sound is my Goldilocks just right.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it'll be interesting to see where Martin go with their SC guitars and where the other companies go with their guitars. I feel like some companies are trying to make better unplugged guitars, and some companies are working on making better amplified guitars. So it'll be interesting to see where it all ends up. Chris Hull said he's heard people talk about Granadillos sounding like Brazilian rosewood. Have you noticed that on the 000 and 0016?
The Granadillo, to me, it sounds like, it definitely sounds like it's more similar to the rosewoods. Would I say it sounds like Brazilian rosewood? No, I don't think it does. I think it sounds like itself. I think it's a really nice sound. It's got a great fullness to it. It's ideal for small-bodied guitars. I think there's a reason they didn't use it on the Dreadnoughts in that series. I think it makes smaller bodies have better bottom end and better low mids and fill it up. And I would bet you they tried it on a Dreadnought, and they tried it on a slope-shoulder Dreadnought and said, it's too thick, it's too full. And that's probably why they didn't go that route. So I would not say, no, I would not, it's not nearly as complex. For me, the rosewood sound, The Brazilian rosewood sound has to do with all of the colorful flecks that are in the overtones and the undertone, and the not so much the voice. It's not about the voice you hear when you're doing a fast bluegrass thing. It's about the voice where you strum a chord and let it hang in the air. That's where I hear the difference between Brazilian and the other rosewoods.
Everyone's saying thank you for doing this, and I say thank you as well. Thank you for helping me curate my info with Maury when we discuss the guitars as well. I really appreciate it. As you've played so many guitars, as you know so much about the history of Martin guitar, why have you not become a clinician at Martin guitar?
Well, there's a couple. There's a reason. People say Martin should hire you. Well, if Martin actually hired me, I would never be able to voice my honest opinion again in public because I'd be an employee.
Right.
And that's not really a joke, because when Mortison Tenon neck joint came out on the MTV guitar, and then all those 16s and all that, their sales reps were told you had to look people in the eye and say it has no effect on tone whatsoever. And that's just simply not true. You played those 16s next to the 18s almost entirely exact, but the only thing different was the neck joint. 16s were very vibrant, very forward thrusted, top voice. They did not, but the top voice and the back body voice was kind of separated. It never gelled together like the 18s does. It didn't come up and swamp that, which is why Taylor players tended to like the 16s, because it had a great chime up front and didn't have that tubbiness coming up that a lot of people would say Martins are too tubby and sound too thuddy and all that stuff. They want that clarity and definition, and they don't want all that extra stuff going around. But to answer your question, at Maury's Music's opening ceremony, he's had a party at his shop opening, and now we know 2003, in this nice old house actually on the street there in Coaldale, Pennsylvania. And he had people giving some performances at the cinema next door that had been a theater. He asked me to do a quasi-clinic, and I got up and I played different, OM 35 or whatever it was. I talked about the OM. I then did a song, and I played these different guitars, and I talked about the woods, and I did all this. Talked about the woods, demonstrated the guitars by playing songs. After it was over, this fella came up to me and said, "How long have you been doing clinics for Martin?" And I said, "I'm not doing clinics for Martin. I don't have any connection to Martin whatsoever." And he said, "Would you be interested in clinics for Martin?" And he gave me his card, and his name was Tim Teal.
Oh, awesome.
And he was the head of instrument design.
Yeah.
So we communicated. He put me in touch with Dick Boak. I had my first real face-to-face with Dick at the following Martin Fest, which followed shortly thereafter. He said, "Okay, you find a New York dealer, there will be a clinic." And I didn't just find a New York dealer. I got to Guitar Center and worked my way all the way up to the head of acoustic guitars in Guitar Center, their home office, who loved the idea. And he said, "We're going to have a clinic." And I went back to Martin, and it got all shut down for two reasons. One is the sales rep at that time in this territory never wanted to have anything to do with clinics. The other reason is internally there was a struggle going on between the people who thought we have to have superstars doing our clinics, and the people who said, no, we need young, attractive people who don't have gray hair doing our clinics. And they had other people saying, no, we want, and Tim came to me not because I'm Craig Thatcher, and not because I'm going to sit there and blow everybody away like Esteban by playing a cardboard box and making it sound like a Stradivarius. He was doing it because I loved Martin guitars, and I knew what I was talking about and had interesting things to say. And the people who've ultimately won out in that, it would happen to be bad timing because they pretty much shut the whole thing down for a little while and came out with their, other than Diane Ponzio, who'd been with them forever, they came out with their new clinic thing that was, similar to the roadshow kind of experience, as Taylor calls them. They call them the Martin Experience now. And I got to see Chris do one, actually. In New York City, and it was really fabulous.
Yeah, I saw him at Rudy's. That's why I asked him to be on this.
We were there. I was there too.
You
I
at
was
Rudy's?
at the same one.
The one.
Yeah, with Emily and whatever the sales rep name is.
Yeah, the one that was like a few months ago.
Oh no, I didn't know. This was a while back. This was before Emily died. Unfortunately, she was a really wonderful person in the custom shop in Martin. But but yeah, no. So this was a couple of years ago.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I went to one within the last 12 months. Yeah, I get that. But like you said, it's a great point that we can just talk here very openly about how we feel about things, which we wouldn't be able to do if we worked for the company, as great as it would be to work for the company. That's a nice thing that we can talk openly about things. One thing I wanted to ask you, actually, they still make the OMJM, which is like is that like eight? Oh, no, not an 18. It's like, is that like what's the style of that guitar? People say
it's similar to a 28, but because it's John Mayer, it's not exactly like that.
No, no, it's not, because it was Mortis and Tenon, and it was. I remember they were.
No, I'm saying styling was
styling,
it looks
yeah,
more
yeah,
like
but the actual build is much lower than that one was. But
he did his first signature model. Paul Simon did the same thing.
Yeah.
They did the first expensive limited edition. Then they came out with one that was designed for the masses that well-off college kids could afford. So yeah, it had the M&T neck. That was the main difference, was the M&T neck, and it didn't have all the expensive aluminum inlay stuff.
Right, but the price has now like doubled. That's now more expensive than the OM28. So my question to you is, what's the difference between the Mortis and Tenon, the simple dovetail, and the dovetail?
Okay, the Mortis and Tenon neck, where the dovetail is a mortise and tenon neck, the mortise and tenon neck isn't a dovetail. The mortise and tenon was a slot in a groove that required two extra braces they call the A-frame brace to help it all stay together, and required a bolt to hold it in place while the glue dried, but they never take the bolt out. But it's not a true bolt-on neck like an electric guitar, like the old Taylors were. There again, Irony Taylor has moved its neck joint closer to traditional neck joints of when Martin was going in the opposite direction on certain models, and the simple dovetail neck joint is really quite amazing to watch the robot make it. It is so precise. Once in a while they still have to touch it up, but it's so precise that it just works. And if you look from above, it's kind of like a bow tie shape joint that connects. It's still smaller. It's not that big, wide dovetail that has so much area from the neck that goes into a solid neck block. That is about, the difference in tone is about energy transference to and from the neck, and having a solid mahogany neck block as opposed to a laminated neck block. So, but I have to say, I know people in Martin who honestly say they can't hear the difference between the simple dovetail and the dovetail, and they would have never said it about the mortise and tenon neck joint. And I think it is super close. And I think I really have to sit there and concentrate to try to say what is different about it. I still think you're getting more of the body resonance out of the traditional dovetail, and it moves around more. And again, some people consider that a bad thing, that you're getting all this wavery stuff that is not entirely in tune. And I like to say the difference between a vodka and a Scotch whiskey is the Scotch whiskey has been aged in a barrel for 3 years, soaking up all these impurities from the wood, and it's actually the impurities that create flavor. And to me, that's what we were talking about. That's what tone is. It's a kind of oral flavor. And I do not think the simple dovetail and the dovetail are identical, but it's so much better. They make the sound of the simple dovetail guitars are so good, and the joint is so good that you don't need the A-frame bracing anymore. So they have the exact same bracing as the standard series Martins now.
So I'm looking at your custom shop. You have a signature guitar. That's really cool.
I don't have. Yeah, it's not. Martin doesn't like people saying that because it's not by any means an official artist model. But I had my guitar built after a lot of research, and Maury and Laurie came to me after I ordered it, and they said, "Can we sell from some of these?"
I've got it on the screen. It looks gorgeous.
And let me just say, I said to them, "Yes, why don't we make it less expensive by changing this?" And they said, "No, we want to use the exact same build sheet." So
you own one of these yourself, obviously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been playing on my social distancing concerts and stuff. I play it pretty often. I play that in my Dreadnought. They're the only two guitars I really play now.
So this is a triple O colorway. It's a Style 21. Addy, and it's quite that the back of that is gorgeous on the one Maury has right now. The wood on the back is so nice. So it's Guatemalan. It's not gloss, right? Satin finish back.
No, it's gloss but a satin neck. It's not the modern style 21. It's style 21 circa 1940. So it's the vintage style 21.
Is that the enlarged sound hole?
So, and it has an enlarged sound hole. I got the large sound hole.
And what are your thoughts on that? The enlarged sound hole. What does that do?
There's a lot of, I wanted it to be, because it's a short scale triple O, and I really love OMs. I was trying to, like my previous short scale one, trying to get the OM sound out of a short scale guitar. And orchestra model is long scale by definition. That's just what it is. And though the old original version just meant a 14 fret Martin, now we refer to the old stamped OMs that are that body size with a long scale neck. The first one I did, the Madagascar one I told you about, I had 1/4 inch bracing that they put on the modern OMs. That did help, but it didn't really help enough. So I have 1/4 inch and standard scalloping, not golden era, because I don't want it to get too wobbly because I'm looking for power. So I did with the larger sound hole for volume, because it gives you more volume. Doesn't necessarily give you more bass response, but Guatemalan and Adirondack is an extraordinarily bassy sound to begin with. So.
And what grade is that? The wood on the top. It looks very uniform. Is that a high grade of wood?
No, it's not. But what it is somebody in the custom shop going back and picking out a piece of wood for me. That's what it is.
So
they don't do that anymore technically, unless you pay extra money and you go with your dealer. But yeah.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Well, you're looking at Maury, so they're picking that out for Maury. The one on mine was probably Emily picked it out. But somebody went back and picked, and looked through and looked for a top that they thought would look good with the back and sides,
It's really nice. If it had the wider nut, I would be interested in having one myself. That's a nice spec. It's very cool.
That was on the waffling on that, because I have a low profile neck. I don't actually like the modified low oval. It hurts my hand because of my sports injuries. It presses on a nerve where my first finger wraps around to do the F shape, that stuff. And so I had a retro too, and I gave it up because the neck bothered my hand too much. Oh. So I go with the low profile, which is flatter. And
so hang on, I'm confused now. So the neck on let's say the retro series guitars, was that the performing artist neck?
No, it was the modified low oval that's on the high performance neck.
Right.
So
okay.
That's what Tim chose. That became the standard neck. And it's one of the few neck shapes they've come out with that doesn't agree with my hand. So I probably won't buy a standard Martin again because of that.
So what neck is on your custom?
The low profile, which was what was on the standard series before they did the reimagining.
Oh, I don't think I've played one of those.
So it's the same neck that would have been on the old 0028 and 0018.
So basically. What? Hang on, I've got a question. If you know the answer, what neck is on the OMJM? Do you know?
That's a good question. It might actually be it might be the modified low oval, because that was the neck that was on the old Aura models that they were aiming at. That was their first modern neck for the new youth.
I got it. Low profile standard taper.
It's low profile standard taper. So it's the same neck that I have. Well, it's long scale though. So it's got the same neck as the old Dreadnoughts had.
There you go. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, well, look, we've gone over 2 hours and we haven't even done half the questions.
Oh, no wonder my cat is threatening to eat me before.
Yeah, my cat as well. I think the best thing we should do is start to wrap up, and then maybe just do another one of these, in the future. Just to.
I'd love to. I hope people aren't like falling asleep out there. So.
Well, I think some people probably are, but I think Martin fans just can't get enough of this stuff. I mean, I can't. So what I'll do is I'll put an invite out there. Email me, aaronshort@me.com. I'll put it in the chat. Email me any questions. And then what I'll do is, once I've got a list of, say, 10 really great questions, I'll see if you want to do another one. And we'll just invite people to come and do it like that. Because there's so many things
I have a note for you as a director. remind your viewers that they can always tune in and watch your broadcast after you're done, your streams.
Yes.
Because I've seen almost everything you've done after you've aired it because of scheduling.
Yeah.
So people can tune in and watch. If they came in the middle of this, they can watch the beginning and see the video you put on at the beginning and all that stuff.
I mean, we've had a great crowd here, so it's been awesome. I think, I've done interviews now with Dick Boak, Chris Martin, Craig Thatcher. Next week I've got Tim Teal on Wednesday. I've had Maury here showing certain models. It's been a lot of fun. I hope, Spoon, that you'll continue to help me with the history, because it's very helpful to me when you give me those facts for my videos with Maury. I really appreciate it. But I'd love to do another one of these with you in the future. So all I'll do is ask people to send me questions, and once we've got some great questions, I'll see if you want to come back and do another one, and we can just continue the conversation, because this is an endless conversation. Maury said...
Well, I'll answer one of those questions right now, because he is still single, ladies.
Maury?
No, me.
Oh, you are. Oh, you think that's the question? Yeah, of course. That was the one we were building up to. You spoiled it now. Maury's music, it's half time. Yeah, well, the truth is, we could do this for a long time. Maybe one day we'll do a 12-hour live stream. We'll set the record for the longest live stream about Martin guitar. I'll have you, Dick Boak, right? We'll get everyone here, and we'll just talk about Martin guitars for 12 hours. We'll set like a thing, and then you guys have to do one longer than us. Good luck with that, right?
Well, yeah, sorry it went so long. I didn't even notice, because I was having such a
not
good
at all.
time.
I don't want to keep you, but I mean, look, Patrick said he could go on for another 2 hours. Everyone's saying it's cool. I'll ask you. Have you got time? Do you want to do one more question?
Sure.
People are still here, so why not? Okay, we'll give you guys a bonus round. Let me go through the list and find one that I think is one of my high priority ones. Okay. Hang on, I'm just reading the other ones. We did do a lot, and a lot of these questions we had were rolled into other ones, which is good. All right, what's your all-time favorite Martin? Because as much as I love Martin guitars, I have played ones that I don't gel with so much. So what's your desert island guitar? Is it going to be your custom shop? Okay.
I'm going to name three of them really quickly, because the best sounding Martin that I remember romantically was a 1940 0040K. It was one of the very few Koa-topped, Koa-body 0040s that was not made for Hawaiian style. So it had normal frets and a normal bridge saddle. I got to play in a private room at Elderly's Instruments with a fellow who was thinking of buying it, who picked me up on the way up to Michigan. And we played it alongside an OM45 Deluxe. But the OM45 Deluxe had been refinished twice, and it's still a spectacular guitar. I know the guy who owns that now, too. So that was probably that. I remember that as being the most impressive sounding. Koa takes years and years and years to break in as a top, but this had 60 years on it at least.
Hang on, what was the Deluxe? OM45 Deluxe? Well, I don't know what that is.
OM45 Deluxe from 1930. That was the actual 1930 OM45 Deluxe. They made 11 of them. That's one of the things that was recently discovered. They made fewer of them than they thought they did, but. That's what's in the museum, that the neck they used to do the modern Deluxe on. That's the greatest neck. That guitar, the OM45 Deluxe, you play that thing, you could play. It's one of those guitars you could play forever. Beautiful neck, but I have to really give the crown to Roy Rogers' OM45 Deluxe. I only got to play it for 10 minutes at Christie's, and I got to say. Great. I don't remember the neck well enough to say was it as good as the one that Martin owns in the museum that they spent $1 zillion buying in auction. But sound-wise, playability, it was just the open, effortless. People talk about, Stephen Stills used to call Martin the American Stradivarius. That this was the American Stradivarius. It was spectacular. And like I said, they didn't even know that it wasn't one of the OM45 Deluxes. It had a serial number that wasn't even accounted for. So I think it was a prototype. It had a different inlay on the pickguard, and that they've since reproduced on the commemorative models and stuff. But that was it. Roy Rogers OM45 Deluxe from 1930. Greatest guitar I've ever played.
All right, in the chat then, what is your Desert Island Martin guitar? Mine's very boring. Mine's just the HD28. But you know, the reimagined, because before the reimagined, you had the retro. So the retro HD28, the HD28 retro was an amazing guitar. Sounded great plugged in too. In fact, it was everything I wanted, but it didn't have any body percussion sounds. So now the standard HD28 for me is that sound is just that's a benchmark for me that I bet I test other guitars against. Rather unfairly again, because a smaller bodied guitar with a pickup isn't going to sound like that. I have to keep reminding myself that. Yeah, so tell us, we'll finish with that. What is your desert island Martin guitar? If you could have one Martin guitar forever, what would it be?
Well, I could have a realistic one that's not Roy Rogers OM45 Deluxe.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever insane amount it went for.
One that you can buy
I think
now.
I have them. I think I have them now, and I have to have two. I got in trouble. People have written me saying, when you mention this stuff, I say you have to have four because you have to have a mahogany OM and a rosewood OM and a mahogany dreadnought and a rosewood dreadnought. And people have written me saying, I actually did that, and you're right, but you made me buy four guitars.
Yeah.
I would have to say my brother's conversion Brazilian D28 is the guitar I'm never going to sell. I put it on sale for $15,000 online because somebody said, put it up for what it'd be worth. And maybe if somebody wanted to give me $15,000, no, don't give me $15,000 for that guitar. But that's it. And my custom TSP. Those are the two guitars. I don't need any other guitars now. I think about getting a mahogany OMC, particularly if I end up relocating out of the country and Brazilian's an issue or whatever. I would probably do a Sitka mahogany OMC with the neck that I want. And it'll probably be the high performance taper now, because I do like those, but it would have to be the low profile, and they've never put those two together before. So, but
yeah, mine would be the HD28 and the deluxe 28 version of the SC guitar. Right, we'll leave it at that. Anyway, yeah.
Be well.
We need to wrap up, everyone. We'll do it again, so don't worry. Do me a favor, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, because the bell tells you when I go live. Remember, next Wednesday is Tim Teal. I'm sure that'll be really fun. Thank you to Spoon. I'm going to put your links below with your website and everything. Just send them to me. I'll put them in the description below so everyone can access that once this video processes, which will take a while because it's so long. That's fine, though.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Where can they find you?
Short-staffed right now. So yeah.
Where can they find you online, Spoon? Just give yourself a plug for me.
TSP Guitar, like Teaspoons Phillips. TSPguitar.com is my musician site. OneMans.com with a Z is my cultural website that has One Man's Guitar in it. That's where all my reviews are for the various. And I should say, we never said this. Originally, the idea was One Man was supposed to be me going into people's private homes and reviewing their guitars. I did a little bit of that, and then Martin really started putting me in the sound room, and I just didn't have time. So it's mainly Martin reviews now, but I'm still eager to go into people's houses if they want me to come. People have come here, brought their guitars to me, and I've done the videos and done the reviews and stuff. So I'm still open to doing that.
That's actually a great idea. And maybe in the future one day we will be together in person in the same room and we can do some guitar stuff together. That would be
Let's
cool.
hope.
Or even at the factory one day. Perhaps we can meet Dick there one day and do some reviews in the museum. That'd be fun. We shall do more together, I hope, Spoon. It's been awesome. I really appreciate everything you do for the community and for me with your information. It's very, very valuable. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Again, please subscribe to Spoon Phillips. Please subscribe to me. Ring the bell so you know when we go live. And we'll do another one of these. But I do need you to send me, let us know you want us to do it in the comments below. Again, as you said, the video will remain online. Comments below. Put your most important questions, the questions you want answers to. We will address them next time in the next video. So have a great weekend, everyone. So Thomas Moore said it's Saturday where he is right now.
Oh,
so it has been a long time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I wonder where he is.
Yeah. Chris Hull, Aaron, have you played a Martin J40? I have not. I would like to. I've played an M36. We're talking about the M36 with Maury next week. I feel it's a bit of an in-betweener. I don't know if I like it or not. We'll discuss it more in detail next week. The J40 I want to try because it's that similar kind of thing. I never played one, so I'm not going to have an opinion on it. But most of the Reimagined series I do really like. I think they've done a great job with those. We'll talk more. Let's leave it there, Spoon. Let's leave it for now. We'll do some more of these. Thanks everyone for watching. We had a great crowd. Thank you, Spoon. Until next time, we'll see you. Yep. See you next time, everyone. Thank you.